typical for just, okay, we're going to license, you're going to license, or a company's going to license the ideal from you or whatnot, and you get paid on royalties? Or is it a situation where you can just kind of sell outright to them? I'm assuming that that will maybe happen if the product is successful, as opposed to kind of still kind of going through the gauntlet. So I guess, how are those deals typically structured uh, from at least the toy perspective of a company?
Right. Well, I think it can happen a lot of different ways. Historically, there's stories, I believe, that G.I. Joe, the person who had the idea, sold it outright to
Mm.
Hasbro or whoever, I think it was Hasbro or Kenner. And of course, they always regretted it because they felt they, but they made a lot. I think at the time they sold it for something like $100,000. This is, 40 years ago. So it's not like they got a bad deal. If it turned out not to be a hit, it would have been a great deal.
Right.
So, that I think that it's all about the, how people do it is different. But the most typical way today, if you're kind of on the circuit, as I would say, I know a lot of other inventors like me who are kind of have come to the same point where they've had enough success that they're invited by most toy companies to pitch. They spend, toy companies will spend the majority of their time on maybe 90% of their time, or 75% on the known inventors that have had hits before,
Makes
you
sense.
know, inviting us to things, making sure it's not a very big group. Maybe there's 100 at the most, in the world that are sort of in that stupid enough to keep trying to do this their whole life. But you do get invited, and you do, have a little inside information. It still means your idea has to be great. It's not any easier to sell in an idea just because they know who you are and you had a Bopit or a success. The idea has to stand on its own. So it's hard. Um, and what's easier is that the flow and how you do a deal. But the deals are typically, if a company likes your concept enough, after maybe a 30-day grace period, you sort of bug them and say, hey, if you want to hold that idea and have me not show it to a bunch of your competitors, if you want to create an exclusive, you do an option, kind of like if someone was selling a movie script, you
Yeah.
get it. An option is a very simple agreement that says, for the next 30 or 60 days, we're going to pay you, $5,000 to hold this idea. And if we decide not to do the idea, you can keep the money. If we decide to go forward with the idea, that money will be credited towards a future royalty. So
Gotcha.
then, right. So that's sort of a very typical way that a lot of licensing works. They're licensing the idea. You then have to, during that process, they might check to see, is this patentable? Is there IP? Has it been done before? Because they're sort of taking a chance.
Yep.
Then at the end of that period, they either say no thanks, which happens most of the time. And then or they say, we like it and we want to license it from you. And then the licensing agreement would be more like a typical advance that's based on sort of a potentially 25% of the first year's revenue that you might make, which is a whole, who knows, but there'll be sort of a calculation you try to make. But then it's still going to be another year or two before that product ever hits the market.
Yep.
So you've got to imagine, when you're in this business of selling ideas, how long it takes to actually make, if you ever do make a royalty, which is then the royalties, the advance is deducted from your royalty. So if you were going to make $5,000 in royalties, but you've already been paid $10,000 up front, you don't make money until it exceeds the $10,000. That advance you get is against the royalties you're going to get. So
Right.
you really need a big enough hit that it sort of overcomes your advance money. And most inventors survive sort of on those options and advances by pitching enough ideas to get a little bit of money coming in that allows you to sort of tread water until you find a big hit,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then you make that. So that's you're going to hear this same explanation from almost any professional toy inventor, is about that same model.